showing.
I'm bored.
Just
Kidding.
Hey, there's a weed map.
Because I don't want to wait necessarily for a lot of people to come in, so you can see this video after I post it, just to get it over with. But I wanted to make an addition
Is that truck?
Yeah, and an addendum to what I had said in the previous video. After reading some of the comments that were left after I ended the last video, I want to make some statements about, or at least in response to what they had said. So
today, Junior.
Hey, look, Anissa's on. All right. Anyway,
she was bored. I told her to go watch it.
Oh yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, I actually do agree with some of the people that, hey Greta, with some of the people that had commented on my last video. I actually do agree that it is a bad idea in most cases. Remember, there's always exceptions, but in most cases, I do not think it's a good idea to have combat veterans serving on police forces. It's just not. However, while I mentioned that soldiers are trained to sort of dehumanize the enemy, what I didn't say, but I guess I need to, is that there's a difference in my view between the way the military operates and the way the police operate. And it's a completely different world, because the world of the military is not to serve, or to, I mean, it is to serve, but it's not, you're not directly involved with Americans necessarily. Ostensibly, you're protecting Americans. That's the country is sending us to war for, to protect Americans, but you don't have a direct role and interaction with American citizens, and so it's a completely different animal. However, in the military, even though we are trained to dehumanize, we kind of dehumanize the enemy, we're also trained to recognize a threat. And we are given very, very strict rules of engagement, unlike, in my view, or my opinion, the police forces in this country. So in the military, even in combat, you pretty much have to be engaged in direct combat, in other words, getting fired at, before you can actually use small arms against another individual. And a lot of times, if you're not being shot at, just the fact that someone's got a gun is not an excuse to shoot them necessarily, because they might be giving up. They might, they might not. There's a huge difference. We are trained in rules of engagement on when we can and cannot shoot, and we actually have to be able to threat. And that threat has to be someone pointing a gun at you, not just if we shot in Iraq. If we just shot people just because they had a gun, can you imagine the outrage that the American people and the world would have? And yet, when it comes to our police forces, that's no big deal. And that's kind of why, he's got a gun, I felt threatened. He moved his hand up. Well, his cell phone looked like a gun, I felt threatened. That's the difference between the rules of engagement here at home, which is really kind of terrible, because, as I said in the beginning of the video, there's a difference between the police are there to serve the people directly, whereas the military is there to serve the people in a broad national security sense, not a direct individual sense. And yes, I know the courts have said the police have no duty to protect you. That's not what I'm talking about. So when you combine the lack of an ROE in our police forces with the dehumanization of our military, that's a bad combination in my view. And so I actually do not support, in most cases, using combat veterans as police officers, because there's a very aggressive mindset that you get in the military, and when you're put into a police force where the rules of engagement are not as strict at all, our rules of engagement and shooting the enemy in combat are much, much more strict than the rules of engagement on American soil against American citizens. Think about that. It is easier legally for a cop to kill you than for a soldier or warrior to kill the enemy. And that's exactly why people like Eddie Gallagher were put on trial, because the rules of engagement are so strict over there. And I mean, if there's even just a hint of, well, I don't think you should have done that, then, you know, the military doesn't, it's not like the police forces where the entire system protects you. Military, if you screw up, they will eat you alive. Whereas in the police forces, you have to do something really, really dumb and really, really stupid and outside the norm.
And get caught.
And get caught. Yes, thank you. Before you get prosecuted as a cop. And then generally you're going to get off anyway because juries aren't going to convict you. And you're going to get qualified immunity by the judges if you don't make it that far. So those are the two things that I wanted to clarify about. Because we're trained to dehumanize the enemy, we're also concurrently trained on actually recognizing threats. And we go through a lot of shoot, don't shoot scenarios and things like that, and before you go to combat. And you know, okay, X person has a gun. Can you shoot? No. Pointing a gun at you, can you shoot? Yes. But then there's caveats to that. So, I mean, literally in the military, this was our rules of engagement, even in combat, except for like early combat when it was just force on force and you're in the heat of an actual battle. But for the most part, unless you have to actually be getting shot at in order to shoot back. It's just, unless there's some prevailing reason why you need to shoot somebody that's not shooting at you. So I wanted to make that clear. I wanted to clarify that because there were some comments on my Eddie Gallagher video that I just did, and saying that basically soldiers should be disarmed or warriors should be disarmed. No, because if I thought that all people were the enemy, that's the mistake, and that's what people aren't listening to, is soldiers don't look at everyone as the enemy. We're trained to recognize who the enemy is, and that's the person that we target. Whereas, in my opinion, the police are trained that everyone that they come in contact with is the enemy. And they're supposed to pretend that everyone wants to kill them. And that, I think, is the biggest chasm between the two, and why I don't think you should take the warrior mentality of a soldier and put it into the law enforcement realm of where the rules of engagement are so much looser. And I know cops are like, oh, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, because our rules of, we're not allowed to shoot. We come under a lot of scrutiny. Sorry. There are over 1,000 people shot, many of whom are unarmed every year. You hear about it almost at least weekly, if not more, where a police officer shot someone because, oh, they moved, or he didn't do what I told him to, or I thought he had a gun, or there was a bulge, or I didn't know it was a cell phone, or he was grabbing something out of his car. Okay, that was his wallet. That happens way, 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 way too often. So there you go. There's my clarification on that. And look at that. Under 10 minutes. What do you know? But
it's a living miracle.
It's a living miracle. And I'm bored. I'm on the road right now. Not for very long, but I'm on the road right now. And driving is about the most boring thing you can do, except when you're in Austin, and then it just makes you angry. Yeah, but you were sleeping.
I was dozing because I was listening to you.
You can't doze when you're listening to me. I'm saying important stuff.
No, you.
Do I need to be more animated when I speak?
Constantly talking all the time.
Is it? Are you saying I talk too much?
Yes. All the time. There's no peace. Why do you think our room at night, I am like always like, shh, it's quiet time.
Yeah.
Like a 2-year-old.
Cops do need to know the law better. I completely agree. Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to argue with my wife.
What?
They're saying, shh, don't argue with your wife. See, they're taking your side. Ah! All right. Hey, y'all take care. Be safe. Be free.